All right, and we're live with, again, very little production value, just kind of jumping right in. I am here with Kamran, who is brand new to this particular channel and to who I am very grateful for his time. Doug, who we've seen before, and Heath, who we've seen before, and they have their own channels. Doug, and all of the information is located in the description box. So Doug's channel, also a link to his most recent book, The Heroine's Labyrinth. Heath's channels, as well as a Kickstarter that's upcoming, and Kamran's Patreon. If you all want to maybe go around the horn and introduce yourselves. Oh, also, I think I told Heath and Doug this, but Kamran, I may not have told you. If I am echoing to you, please let me know, and I'll mute as everyone else is speaking. I think my laptop is about to go. Screen glitching. And
it's good right now. As of now,
okay, great. Okay, great. So I guess, Kamran, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
Sure. No, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kamran Pasha. I'm a filmmaker, director, producer, screenwriter, and novelist. I've been working in Hollywood for 24 years, or at least surviving Hollywood for 24 years, and I've had a few successes and a lot of failures, but it's enough to stay in the game. And I've become sort of a bizarro fringe YouTube personality, and so I'll take that as well on top of it. But yeah, and so that's who I am, and hopefully my comments will be of some value. So.
I'm sure they will, for sure. And then Doug, we'll go alphabetical.
Being a bizarro YouTube personality has got to be a badge of honor on some level. My name is Douglas A. Burton. I just started a bizarro YouTube channel myself. So it's at Douglas A. Burton. Come join. We'll talk about pop culture, talk about writing, and every now and then the Byzantine Empire. And then I also have a book out, The Heroine's Labyrinth, as James Bacon mentioned, and that is available on Amazon or anywhere books are sold.
And then Heath.
You're on mute, Heath. You're muted.
All right, so yes, I am Heath. I have a few channels. I've got the Heath's Geekverse channel, which is all about tabletop gaming. The Table Talk channel, which all of you have been on, which we really got to know each other through. But then also the Cultists channel is my channel, which is my mockumentary web show about modern day Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who don't understand. And what I've decided to do is I've decided to go ahead and release re-release season 2. So season 2, episode 1's already on the channel. All the trailers are up there. Next week, we'll release season 2, episode 2. We have over 7,000 subscribers over there. So I really appreciate everyone who's been coming out for the Cultists.
Wow. That's right.
Despite YouTube's efforts to censor you.
Despite YouTube's constant efforts to stop that show.
I was going to say, you got to change your tagline. People who want to worship Cthulhu with an algorithm that doesn't understand.
That does not understand what we are trying to do.
What we discover, Heath, is that the actual dark occult forces behind Hollywood are not the Illuminati. It's actually Cthulhu worshippers, and you're exposing them. And this is
maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, they don't need that kind of attention, man.
Who is this guy?
YouTube has definitely been coming after that hard with its policies, and even though there's no reason to, because it's a PG show. But I'm continuing the fight. I'm fighting the good fight. Let's go.
Absolutely.
All right, so thank you all. We're here to talk about Sinners today. So I want to warn anyone who is currently in chat, if you haven't seen the film, we are going to likely go into spoilers quite extensively. We're going to be talking about the events in the film, the theming, the different situations, the messaging, likely some interviews from the director to explain certain elements in the film. So if you are interested in seeing the film completely fresh and clean, I would advise that you turn away now or have it spoilered forever and ever. Amen. So where do you think we should start, Kamran? Because I know that you've spoken about this film already sort of extensively via podcasts and other means. Is there anything, after having seen the film so many times, that really is like the beating heart of the film, or is there any sort of theme that you'd like to go into? Because it's not exactly an easy movie to discuss because there's so much meat on the bone. And I find it very difficult to kind of nail down a starting place.
It is difficult because then that's its genius, is that you walk out of this movie going, that was a work of art, right? That's an amazing movie. You walk out of that. and then you have to like process all the parts of it. So I think the foundational thing is that the script is brilliant.
Yes.
And I'm saying that as a professional screenwriter, as someone who consults and trains and teaches screenwriting at the university level, right? And I've now watched it 3 times. I plan to watch it again 4. I've already got my tickets for IMAX for time number 4 this weekend. And each time I'm watching it, I'm catching more and more of the ingenuity of setup and payoff that he does. Tiny little things that he sets up, tiny little things that are intentionally paid off. And every time you watch the movie, you find more of them. And it's like Easter egg of it. It's like he made this comment, right? And I'll give you just one example that's so tiny and brilliant. It's so tiny that you have to watch it multiple times to realize that there's a theme throughout this movie of in the old South 1930s that people living in sort of the sharecropper, small Mississippi world, they're so broke they don't have US dollars. So they're using sort of essentially monopoly.
Right.
Yes,
they're using local money. They're using local money, and it's red colored, right? Or even and many of the poorer black people are using wooden nickels.
Wooden nickels, yeah.
Exchange value outside of their community, right? But they're means of exchange, and then so that's just a thing that you see throughout the movie, and it actually serves an important point because they need money, and that leads to the vampires and all of that, right? And then at the very end, I don't know if Douglas or Heath, you noticed this. Everyone seen this, right?
Yes.
All right.
So,
So notice it at the very end, at the end credits. So here's at the end credits when our surviving vampires go to meet our older version of one of the characters 60 years later. At the very end credits, one of the last things they do is they leave $200 bills on his table, right?
Yes.
And he focuses on that. The camera focuses on that. You realize, oh my God, he's setting up that the character is he's finally escaped his poverty, that there's actual currency in his hand, right? That's such a tiny little thing. There's thousands of these, right? That's the thing of the genius of movies. There's thousands of setups and payoffs because why is the camera focusing on $200 bills on a table? Because he's making a point. He's making a point, right?
Yeah, I think that point is multi-layered too, because and this is something that Candace sort of leaned in. We were watching the film and she leaned in about, I don't know, I want to say like 30 minutes, 45 minutes through the film. And what she said was, I love the focus on the bartering and the bargaining. There is always something to be bartered. There's always something to be exchanged. There's always
talk about it.
And they talk about it.
The point of bartering.
And at the end, there is no barter. He just puts the money on the table and he leaves. And I think that shot is such a genius shot for that culmination to show there is no more bargaining and there is no more poverty. But we know what was sacrificed to get to that point, right?
But see, that's the example of how brilliant the screenplay is. But to answer your earlier question, which is what is this movie about? Because I've thought about it a lot, right?
Oh, it's a heck of a question.
Yeah, and so and this is one of the movies everyone's going to find another answer, right? That's the genius of a good piece of art. Everyone sees something in it, right? So for me, I think this movie, it's a critique of colonialism and oppression. That's what this movie is. Right. Ultimately, on a foundational level, that's what the movie is.
Yes. I think that the film is. I've been calling it an American lament, because I feel like that's really what it is. But it extends further back in time than just the small window that we see. Because the vampire Remick, I think is his name, is ancient.
Ancient.
We know that he witnessed the Romans and the Brits crossing to Ireland to sort of destroy their culture. So that's
and the rise of Christianity, which is 5th century. That's 5th century AD.
Yes.
He was there then.
So he is ancient, and he constantly drops hints throughout the film, the largest of which is when he says the Lord's Prayer with Sam. Because he says, they invaded, and even still I find comfort in those words.
Yeah, they forced my father.
Agree.
And that's actually another theme. That's a theme that I think people don't realize. That's actually a consistent theme in this film. It's hidden, but it's there. Is
Fatherhood?
The forcible conversion of religion.
Oh, yes.
Irish were forcibly pulled into the Christian church, as were the African Americans, which is a point that the West African slaves. I mean, I'm a Sufi. My spiritual teacher is from West Africa, from Senegal, which is the primary source of the slave trade. Right. So I've been there and multiple times. And so the religion of most of our enslaved ancestors was Islam or animism. Primarily Islam, but there were some animists, and that's what this movie taps into, sort of the animist aspect of it. But they were Christianized in the society, whether they had a choice or not. Same with the Irish.
Yes.
And that goes back down to the issue of sinners. That's the title, right? That, it's bookended with a preacher. He's a preacher's boy. He's a son of a preacher, and he's being told the music is sinful, right? Which many conservative religious people in many religions, including sadly, many conservative Muslims think music is sinful. I don't think that, but they do. And the point is, here he's preaching from a religion that was imposed upon him about what sin is, right? There's so many layers, so it just doesn't end.
Yeah, and thinking about, and I'm sorry, Doug and Heath, I'll shut up.
No, that's fine. I'm listening.
The title "Sinners" is so perfect; it could not have been called anything else. And even that is so multifaceted and multi-layered with regard to the different groups of people that we're dealing with, and how everyone in the film is a sinner. Quite literally, as you have learned as an American what the word sinner means, everyone in the film is a sinner in some way, shape, manner, or form. And there's also this, I'll shut up. Doug, Heath, please jump in.
You're fine.
No, I mean, you're right. They spend a lot of time setting that up. And if there's a critique of I don't agree with, but if the critique of the film that does take a long time to get to, I went in completely blind. I did not watch a trailer. I didn't watch anything. I just heard that it was great. And so I went and watched it, and I think it is great. But they spent a lot of time developing that theme. What is every person? By the time you get to actually fighting vampires, then you actually have a lot of personality behind each person and the sinner relationship. That's right. That's what you've got, and that's what you've set up. By the time oh my God, they're vampires in this movie. I mean, I didn't even know. I didn't know where we were going. I loved going into this completely blind, because it was okay.
When did you figure out they were vampires? Did you figure it out when you first received Remick in that strange way that we meet him? When did you figure it out?
Right then, I was like, okay, we got something going on, right? Yeah. But yeah. When he runs up to the door, right? Yeah, that okay, something's going on.
He's like smoking, his body smoking.
Right, yeah. He's smoking and things like that.
It's like the sun is in the clouds, but it's still burning him.
Yeah, but then we're going to be dealing with real supernatural elements and things like that. I mean, that just. That came organically.
And the movie sets that up. The movie within the first 15 minutes shows you that flash forward to all of or I guess technically it's a flashback because we're seeing things in that first opening scene. We're seeing things at the end of all of the events that have taken place. So we see that flashback, and it's kind of like the movie saying, yes, but give me a minute. There's a whole lot else for us to talk about first, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. But please continue.
Well, I was going to say that along the line. So I never thought about it on a macro level. I think, Cameron, you said colonialism and forced conversion, which is interesting because I was looking at it on more of a micro level, which was in essence the same thing. The idea of outside forces trying to get in, and because it's a traditional vampiric, model. You must ask permission before coming in. So there's a lot of outside pressure trying to get into this juke joint. And so there is this sort of us versus them. And it's weird too, because the way the film portrays the outside forces trying to come in, they didn't just blatantly demonize them. They tried to give them a sales pitch. And I always appreciate this. They're like, hey, this is a good deal out here. Like what we're doing. They tried to, they had the vampires believe in what they were trying to sell. They're like, look, you just got to say yes, and it's on, and you get to be part of all of this out here.
And you're going to have power. Yeah.
Right. And there's power.
Well, it's not just power, though, is it? It's belonging. And this is part of that whole American lament, right? It's the family you're given versus the family that you choose. The vampires, they were offering that American melting pot, right? In order to get that, you do have to sacrifice an element of your ancestry. You have to sacrifice an element of your soul. You do have to, as a Black individual, live next to the white supremacists or the former white supremacists, right? So there is that statement that's being made there. And I found it absolutely fascinating. My brain's abuzz. I'm going to shut up again because I need to organize my thoughts. But please, I just wanted to toss that out there.
I'll say this. One of the things that all I knew about this film was what I got from the trailer, which was well in advance. I remember being like, "Oh, that looks interesting." That was about the extent of how I felt after the trailer. It looked compelling. It was like, okay, because you know how it is when you watch trailers. You're like, "Nah, I'm not going to watch that," or you're like, "Oh yeah, that looks cool," or "Oh, dude, I can't wait." So there's a reaction to trailers, and this was more of the, that looks interesting. Kind of a mid to high level kind of reaction. What I appreciated about this film immediately was its originality. Mm-hmm. So it's not just another vampire film. This is like no other vampire film I had ever seen. Mm-hmm. It's really almost a fusion of two types of one is like a historical drama, and the other is like this vampire battle. It's almost like two different.
Well, the start of it is historical drama,
right? But
the start of it is like more like Malcolm X. It's like the first hour of Malcolm X, where you're seeing the life of Black people in the world. You think this is a docudrama about 1932 Mississippi, and it's really interesting. And you're really like compelled by these people, right?
Right. It's really
there's a whole movie with them without the vampires.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
So I got invested in all these characters without the traditional nudges from the horror genre getting me invested in the horror matchup. I got invested in the characters, I got invested in the setting, and then by the time the vampires came in, you really cared about the outcome because they maintained a character-driven clash between this, and we'll get into this in a second, but music played such a heavy-handed role in the most positive way. And well, anyway, so I appreciated this attention to detail and to history that was brought into this, that most horror genre or terror genre, they skip that. They really try to go for the effect. And this almost pathologically refused to submit to just the effect and really forced you to get into this world, which is very well done. And 1932 Deep South Mississippi, I don't know if I've been there for a long time in a movie. Like, you could hear the crickets all the time outside, and people are playing on a band. There's chatter around there.
The last time you saw that is Malcolm X, Spike Lee's Malcolm X, his childhood. That's the last time you see the South in that time period from Black people's perspective. That's the last time.
But it was such a refreshing transportation, and that's what you want as an audience member, to be transported. Go ahead, Heath. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say that you've got that, and you have the Louisiana element in this that's coming in, and that reminded me of the True Detective show and its themes and coming back. And I was just reminded about how much, when we're talking about supernatural elements and the beyond or the supernatural, that comes back to Louisiana. And we had the witch character, which I loved. I mean, I immediately clued in on that because she's got the pouches and stuff that's hanging.
You got the mojo bags and all those.
Exactly, off of her belt and stuff like that. I loved her costuming as soon as that she came on screen. Immediately recognized, just by her costuming, you recognized her as some kind of witch.
Yeah,
right. And then you had the tie-in with Louisiana, and I was thinking about all the thematic elements of Louisiana. And voodoo and all that, and that comes with True Detective, and so much comes out of that, and that weaves its way in here too.
See, one of the great things about this story and the screenplay is there's absolute respect for the intelligence of the viewer. It does not explain things. It just lets things happen, and you piece together all of it. Like, you figure out Smoke was once married to this woman, and then he had a baby, and the baby died. There's no moment where they tell you any of that. You figure all of it out. You figure out their past. Oh, these two were you figure out, these brothers, they were in World War I in Germany in the trenches, right? Like, you figure all of it out. It's never told to you, and yet you piece together everything. There's such an incredible confidence that you're going to figure it out. And one of the visual moments, we're talking about the magic, now I've seen this movie now 3 times.
Wow.
At the moment where Smoke, one of our characters, is being attacked by a certain vampire to turn him into a vampire, the vampire isn't able to bite him, and they don't show why. But it's because he's carrying the mojo bag. And you remember, he's got a mojo bag to protect him.
I was like, that's it.
Any other filmmaker would have zoomed in on the bag. You don't need to, because he already established the existence of the bag. So the artist is smart enough to remember he's got it.
Well, I will say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just be real quick. I was just going to say, in writing, great stories in film and in literature don't tell you, they don't spell it out for you. And what's so awesome about being a reader or an audience member experiencing these stories is upon multiple viewings, you get the fun of unpack. I mean, like, oh, that's why oh my God. And great stories. You can watch a 50th time and find something new, and it still holds up the structure. So that's part of I thought this was actually in the realm of genius in terms of its storytelling. And I haven't said that in a long time, by the way.
I agree.
I think that a step further, and I've said this, and it makes it sound like hyperbole. It's not hyperbole to me. I believe this is going to be remembered as one of the great American movies, a generational film. There's only a handful of those. There's Gone with the Wind. There's Lawrence of Arabia. There's Fellowship of the Ring, when that first introduced the Lord of the Rings world. Star Wars. Terminator 2. There are moments where filmmaking changes, where a generation of filmmakers is born, where people watch Terminator 2 and say, I want to make movies like that. People watch Star Wars, I want to make a movie like that, right? People watch Casablanca, I want to make a movie like that. And then this is one of these moments where kids are going to walk out of this, go, I want to become a filmmaker like that. This is going to change a generation.
Thank God, because one of my biggest complaints, and I've said this, I think, on other streams discussing other topics, is the kind of slop, or I don't want to be too harsh, but a lot of the films that are coming out that are terrible. I don't like a lot of these films. There's a clear regression in the skill and competency in the writing and in the craft. Like Acolyte was it was a problem on the craft level, the filmmaking level. And so I was like, the biggest crime in all this is that when you're showing your show or your movie to another generation, they're going to be like, and then they're going to go on to stuff. They're going to get involved in social media, hating it or loving it, and then they're going to go on with their lives. They're not going to inspire anybody. You're going to lose entire generations. No one's going to want to go to Hollywood. So a film like this will, and there's a scene in particular that I thought where I had that exact thought, and I'll talk about it when the time comes. I was like, that's the kind of scene that someone's going to say, I want to do a scene like that.
Well, we all know what scene that is.
Piercing the Veil. Yeah.
It's the musical scene, and we will jump into it because that is the scene that there's very rarely you watch a movie and go, I've never seen that before. This is a moment where you watch a movie, and you have a scene where you've never seen that before, and it's now going to be mimicked, and no one's going to get it again like this movie got it.
No, and I even said to you, Cameron, on Facebook, I said that it is that piercing the veil scene it's piercing the veil in a way that we've never seen before in filmic history.
Yeah.
Can I talk about that scene? Because I talked about it on Lorena's channel and I loved it. So this scene, I actually had an emotional reaction to it.
Oh, me too.
I had two emotional reactions.
That's its intent. To make you be swept away and feel.
Right. I had two emotional reactions. One was the ending, which caught me off guard. I was shocked that I had an emotional reaction at the end. But I had, and I can't even remember the last time I had this, where I'm sitting in the theater and there's an effect that the filmmaker is doing, and it comes out and it just hits you, and you're shaken. There's an emotional reaction to what you're seeing. It's been a while. This scene really got me, and so
it's because you were there. It's because, and pardon me for the interruption, but it's because you were there. The way that the sound was engineered for us to be able to hear it in the theater as that entire scene was unpacking, put you there. You were there in that room with everyone because of the sound engineering.
It was also visual. It was a wonder. Yes. It's a wonder. The entire sequence.
Yep, the whole thing, it's a wonder.
The camera is going all of these places where these characters are dancing and time is bending, and they never cut.
Yep.
So let me say that. So real quick, just to set the stage here, that this film has a lot to say about music without saying much, which is a compliment. It's a huge compliment. And what I wrote in my review, in fact, I wrote a review on Cameron's Patreon. One of the things that I said is, in the age of AI, where there's this smothering effect of artificiality in images and sounds and CGI, the impact of it all has been reduced significantly. The value of it all has been lowered. So when I heard like a blues riff or just music for the sake of music, this sort of raw playing improvisational music, there was I had a massive sense of like, it was refreshing. It was so refreshing. And there's this like music constantly in this film, in the background, in the characters. So music is very present in this film. And the scene we're talking about, I'm going to call it a sacred fire scene, because it deals with what I call continuity of the native culture. You have a character, but your character comes from something. There's a world that existed before you, and there will be a world that exists after you. The handing of the torch, the eternal flame. That's what the sacred fire is talking about. So when this scene hits, they're talking about music, and there's a discussion, and they're talking about, and there's like a shaman style discussion, and he's like, there's a past and there's a future, which is sacred fire language. They're talking about a continuum. And my first reaction, I was a little jarred because the camera starts pulling out, and at first, so they're talking about the what I would call the sacred fire of African music and dance. That's what this is.
Not just African.
Yeah, not just African.
Right.
Chinese ancestry.
It starts with African, but there's Chinese represented, and really this can be applied to any culture anywhere. So they're talking, and then he's like, we're all here dancing in the juke joint, but we're not just here dancing. This comes from something. And as the camera starts to pull out, and I love single takes, by the way. The Revenant did it. Children of Men did it. It was kind of the Birdman did it. I really like these takes.
Daredevil did it.
The camera shows African native dancers as if they're hanging out in the juke joint. And at first you're like, oh, where'd those guys come from? Because you're not sure what the filmmaker's doing yet. And then the single take moves through the juke joint, and then you see like a guy from the 80s with like high tops, and it's like hip hop. And then this is when I got, and that was the jarring part. So I was like, oh, he doesn't belong there. And as the camera continues to move and you see all these other souls from all these musical eras along this continuum, the sacred fire continuum, they're all there in the juke joint dancing. So it's not just a group of people dancing one night. They're doing something that has been done for millennium, and they're part of this tradition, whether they knew it or not. And then they even show the Chinese traditional dancers, and it moves through the entire juke joint. And that's when I had a shocking reaction, because that's just art, and only film can deliver a shot like that. Only film can do it. So anyway, it's an incredible. And that's when I was like, oh my God, this might be a work of like.
And that event is the catalyst. That is the event that brings the vampires. So
yes, because now the vampire must get to him.
Yeah, my mouth fell open. It's one of those rare moments where I sat there during that scene, and my jaw unhinged, my eyes went wide, and then when that scene climaxes, the vampires are standing outside, mouth unhinged. They are stunned because this is something that can allow them to connect with the past that they've lost for all these years, the price of eternal life. And if you again, now I've seen it 3 times. If you look at those 3 actors who played the original vampires, right? The looks of their face of pure wonder and longing and magic. I'll be honest, I watch this movie. The vampires are never, they're scary. They're never the villains of this movie.
No, they are never the villains.
They're never the villains. They're never bad. You have to defeat them, but they're not bad.
The idea of the vampires, at least in the way that I watched the film, was that what they did was offer a different kind of freedom. You did have to sacrifice something in order to be able to achieve it. However, they were violent and they were murderous, but everyone who they attacked got back up and joined their family, right? And then
everyone who attacked got better. I mean, many of them got better. The Ku Klux Klan people were morally better after they became vampires.
Great. And then the continuation of this is that once the vampires were defeated toward the end of the film, immediately on the morning of the next day, we have the Klan visit the juke joint with the intention of killing everyone inside, putting the vampires next to the Klan. And it's Klan being another name for family, another name for organization. There's the vampires, which are typically organized into a clan. It's a whole thing, but juxtaposing the vampires from the previous evening with the KKK the morning after really puts, I think, into stark relief the fact that the vampires are not villains. They are not evil. They are not enemies. They merely offer a different type of freedom that requires sacrifice.
Right. They're true to their characters. The vampire, if you have eternal life, this makes sense to you. You think that you're giving a gift. You're giving a gift of eternal life. However horrifying that transition might be, you're giving this gift.
Which is what they offer in the final credit scene. It's an offer.
Yes.
It's an offer.
Right.
And you also see that in those scenes where they are trying to gain entrance by being invited in, because that's a typical vampire kind of thing. But I was thinking about that in terms of like a Dungeons and Dragons game, about how difficult that is to portray. Hey, can I come in? No. Okay. Well, like, where do I go? Like in the moment when you're trying to, do something like that back and forth. Except for this was an incredible portrayal of that, because it's a dialogue back and forth, about, let me in, and reasonings about this, not just, hey, let me in. No, you don't need to come there. It's a dialogue. And I think that's what you're talking about when you don't see just villain, because you get to have the dialogue at that door, at that threshold, that what this is all about. Well, and I love this interpretation of the vampires must be invited in, of everything I've ever seen with an interpretation.
There was no racism to it. When they were like, no, as a viewer, you just got a sense that they just got a bad vibe from this guy. Like, dude, I don't think we should let this guy in. Like, I never got any like racial sense there.
And the vampires don't seem, they're not like, they're like, oh, okay, I'll just hang out here, right? Because there's that character, Cornbread, I love that character, right? Who, is turned into a vampire, and then, he's asked to be let in. And that's where that conversation happens. And because he's trying to come up with rationalizations why he can't just walk inside, right? But he actually makes the point. He makes the point. It's rude. It's rude. It wouldn't be civilized. That's why the universe doesn't let vampires to walk in. It's disrespectful. You have to invite them in, right? And while he was rationalizing, coming with an excuse to get inside, that's kind of thing, because Remick is actually a gentleman. Remick throughout this entire movie is a gentleman. Even in the final sequences when he's like trying to get Sammy, our preacher boy, right? He wants Sammy to be his partner in the journey. They're going to make beautiful music together
forever,
right? And forever, and it's going to open up time for everyone. Remick is not a villain. He's an Irish gentleman who has survived. One of the points that's, again, seen now multiple times, and so what is that when Remick first arrives at that couple's house and he's begging, pleading, please let me in, my family, we've been attacked by Indians and blah blah blah, they took my wife. And these guys don't care. And then intentionally, he cuts to Remick can see they've got clan robes inside the house.
Right.
And then he switches tactic. Then he offers them money because he realizes these people are bad moral character. Empathy is not going to let them in. So I'm going to be let in the only other way. If you're not going to let me in through ethics and that, then I'll buy my way in because you're that kind of low moral character. And
it's another bargain. It's another bargain struck in the film.
And he may not have been lying. Remember that whole story he gives that, they took my wife? We don't know. There could have been a female character that the Indians, his wife on his journey, his wife vampire might have been killed by the Indians, right? And he escaped that incident. So he might not have ever lied even once in that movie.
Yeah. Candace says here, this is relating back to the vampires as monsters or villains. They may be monsters, but they aren't monsters. Remick gets visibly offended when Stack implies that he's a member of the clan. When he says, sir, or rather the sir that he replies with, like, I beg your pardon, we're vampires, not villains. I think that's
that's a great point. Well, and also, because they're humanized in a way that lets you at least understand them as human vampires, right?
Yes.
But even like the idea of we don't know if Remick lied. In a lot of good stories, the villains don't need to lie. Good seduction talk is all rooted in truth. Like, hey, you want this. This is something you want. You don't have to lie. You got something that you're saying. So really good villains tend not to lie. It's the cheaper villains that are the liars,
Well, and remember there's the woman who, by the way, Lola Kirk, who's a singer. She sings that incredibly beautiful, haunting Irish song, right? In there, that's like the siren song that makes you want to become a vampire. She actually sang it, and she's a singer and an actress. And Lola Kirk is great in the moment where Haley Steinfeld's character, they're trying to seduce her to join them, and Lola Kirk says, we're just offering fellowship and love. And from their point of view, they really are, because
that's true. Yes,
vampires are multi-race. And remember, they even said we're going to go, and her uncle or her uncle-in-law or whatever is the clan Grand Dragon. And they said tomorrow before the sun comes up, we're gonna go to him and we're gonna rectify him, right? Because he's a racist. And when he joins our collective vampire hive, where he's got black vampires and Chinese vampires and everything else, that's going to be cleansed from him. The racism is going to be gone.
Interesting, a purification mission there. Shoot, I had a topic I completely forgot. Well, I was gonna mention how much I enjoyed the Rocky Road of Dublin. In the middle of this, the middle of this movie, it's almost like a musical number. If you really watch it, I mean, they're dancing, it's coordinated, but it's interesting. I loved it, by the way. I loved it for some specific, and I asked myself, I'm like, why am I liking this scene? So there's all these vampires. You would think this scene would fail. If I described this scene to somebody and said, this is the scene I'm going to make, they'd be like, Doug, don't do it. With a bunch of vampires line dancing outside a juke joint, singing an Irish song, right? It seems, dude, it's a great scene. They're sweaty. You hear the crickets in the background. It's night. There's a bonfire. It actually looked like a cool party, like to hang out.
And the thing is, because Remick now controls all of them, he instantaneously downloads it to them. So you've got all these people dancing in Irish jig format that they know because they're all one with him.
Yes.
And they're singing along. And that's actually my second favorite scene in the movie, right?
Mine too, because of the way that it's juxtaposed against that piercing the veil scene. Because we go from everyone independently experiencing their ancestry individually and with each other to them all being cut off from that ancestry due to the deal that they made, quote unquote, the bargain that was struck with the vampire and eternal life. And now all they have is each other. And all they have is an echo of what Remick remembers.
And that's why they need Sammy, because Sammy can bring the past back.
Yes.
Remick hasn't seen his people in, his culture has evolved from pagan Gaelic Ireland. He hasn't seen any of them, right? He hasn't seen his people. Everyone he loved died. And then everyone he loved over the generations has died. And culture has evolved. And all of it is lost to him because time doesn't stop. He stopped. But time doesn't stop.
Yes.
And Sammy can let him see his people again.
Yeah. So, and he
It's, I have to just bring it up because I'll just propose this. I would like to talk about the craftsmanship of the movie, including acting and things like that. And I would also like to address at some point why this is not a DEI film, because there is a controversy where people
only dumb people on YouTube must be saying that.
Who is saying that?
Well, to be honest, I haven't heard much pushback or argument, but I have heard that there is a controversy on this.
That would be. Let's get into it because that's pure racism. If anyone's saying that, that's actual racism because none of that is in this film.
Right. So, but I would like to. Okay, we can talk about that right now. So it has elements that I've heard people get reacting to, like the vampires are white, the quote unquote good guys are black and all that. This is not a DEI film or a quote woke film or however you want to call it. I am strongly opposed to that kind of storytelling because it usually denigrates and downgrades the storytelling. The issue is that you take an equity supremacist position, right? And that is the number one priority of your storytelling. That's your top priority. What that means is the rest of your priorities on that hierarchy of priorities, they're going to start to suffer. So this film does not have that problem. That's why a lot of these films that have that sort of messaging in it start to flounder and people are right to criticism because there's so many other things wrong with them. None of that is even close to present in this story.
Because there's no intent behind that. That's not his intent.
Yeah, there's no intent.
There's no weaponization of messaging here. And the main thing is that the craft of the film is so strong that even if there's these elements that people are reacting to, those elements are buried under the excellence of the story. So there's really nothing to be offended by in this movie. You can sit back and enjoy this film for exactly what it is because there's so much going right with it and there's so much meaning. A quote unquote woke writer cannot bring that kind of quality or that level of writing to the table. They just
only people in the whole film that don't give the audience an out is the KKK. That's the only group in the whole film that doesn't give the audience an out. When you're watching Remick and you see that he's an Irish immigrant from the old country who is ancient, who suffered these similar or same sorts of impositions of culture and impositions of faith, and then he comes to the United States to join the melting pot in the like anyone like that is the white viewers out, right? We don't have to feel like this is them versus us or us versus them in that moment, in the moment that this information is revealed, because that's the director and the writer telling you, right, they're the same person. That's the director telling you there is no intention here for that sort of perspective. That's not what he's doing.
And Haley Steinfeld is the lead of this movie, lead actress. And yet, and she is white. What we discover in the film is that her grandfather was part black, and people are like, "Oh, that's actually Haley Steinfeld." Haley Steinfeld's grandfather is black, was black, and her grandmother was Asian. That's why she has a very distinct look. And so he actually cast an actress that reflected the character, genealogically, right? Which is brilliant. But again, she's an incredibly empathetic, brilliant character. Who is the love interest in the film, and again, Remick isn't the villain. I like Remick.
It's funny.
You have to kill him, but
he's a monster. He's not a villain.
He's a monster. I mean, it's like Frankenstein's monster is a monster, but he's sympathetic. Remick is sympathetic, right? Who knows how he was turned into a vampire? But this is a guy motivated by loneliness and pain and loss and a desire to reconnect, fellowship and love. Right?
Fellowship. He wants like companionship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when the first vampire, the first person we see that's turned into a vampire, one of these clan guys, right, in the house, right? When the wife comes, she's horrified. She's seeing her husband dead on the ground. Remick says, "Shh, don't worry, no, it's okay. He'll be better in a second." He really means that. He's going to be better. He's going to wake up. He's going to be immortal, and he's not going to be a racist anymore because he's going to be part of a collective consciousness, right, that transcends that. And he literally means it. He's going to be better.
He gave him a gift in his mind. Yeah.
He's actually, the actor, is so brilliant that he's actually quite hurt that she's screaming in horror. He's like, no, it's going to be okay. Just give it a minute. You'll see that's going to be okay. He's really hurt that she's scared of him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what's funny is there's so much talk around Sinners. And one of the things that I think gets overlooked is how excellent Michael B. Jordan's performance is. It's almost like it's so good it blends into the movie and you forget about it because it's such a natural fit. I didn't know he played two roles in this when I went to go see it. I had no clue. We were sitting down and my wife goes, "Do you know that Michael B. Jordan plays himself and his twin brother in this?" And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "I didn't know that."
I didn't know that when I went in either.
Yeah, and he's excellent in it. He carried just the right amount of like danger in this town. He was an old gangster from Al Capone's crew, either directly or indirectly, and you get a sense, and you get a sense that he's dangerous in this town. One of his opening character scenes is, he shoots a guy.
And we're shooting the guys who even after they're no longer a threat. You got
right. So you get a sense that he could just pull the trump card on anybody at any time in this town, and he's got a plan and don't get in the way. But he also isn't openly belligerent either. He has a plan for this Duke joint. He just doesn't want anyone else to mess with his plan. Is kind of how he's played out. But I thought Michael B. Jordan was absolutely excellent. I think he's going to get nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role for this film. In fact, I think this film's going to have a whole host of nominations. If not awards.
It's going to get the Best Picture nom. Hollywood's going to I don't know if they're going to. Hollywood might give some of these guys awards. Hollywood's going to resist it because this movie is an attack on Hollywood on an economic level. That's the reason. The reason that when this movie came out and it was the #1 movie in the country. The New York Times that weekend puts out this, silly article saying, "Oh, I guess it didn't quite live up to expectations." Dude, it's the #1 movie in the weekend, and within 1 week there was no fall off to like 35 million. That was unheard of.
Well, do you know the deal? Do you know the deal that Coogler struck with Warner Brothers? First of all, I can't believe that Warner Brothers went and made this movie, but this deal that he struck says that in 25 years it's his. He gets the whole thing. He owns it.
Oh wow!
an incredibly it's a Lucas level deal. It's absolutely unheard of.
Because this thing is going to quit a franchise. This thing's going to create. I now want to go back in time and find I want to find out Remek's backstory. I'll follow that guy through the centuries. I will follow him.
Oh yeah, you could put one in Ireland if you want. In the
I'm not used to going to the movie
about Irish culture. If people think about Black, this movie is as much about Irish culture as it is about Black culture. Because if there's any more thing, I don't want to watch a movie about Black people in the South. It's like this movie is about Irish culture. For me, the music that's stuck in my head is the Irish music. I've been playing that on loop.
Yeah, I don't have to. I don't go to movies based on whether I want to watch a film based on a certain culture. I have seen movies across multiple cultural spectrums, time spectrums, as long as it's good. In fact, great movies about other cultures usually get me really interested. Like I found out a lot about how the Chinese settled in the South and how there was a relationship between Black America and Chinese Americans in the turn of the century. I didn't know that. Now I do
how
because
Coogler
this
found
film
that
made
out?
me curious.
Well, you know how Coogler found that? Ryan Coogler found that out and saw an interview. He learned that from his wife, whose grandmother was Chinese in the South. So that's how he didn't know that there was this thriving Chinese, because we know that there was a thriving Chinese culture on the West Coast. We know that, right? We know that. We've seen that in Deadwood. We've seen that for our time, right? You know, and the whole Chinese coolie thing. We've seen that, right? We just didn't know that there was a thriving Chinese culture in the turn of the century in the South. And he didn't know that until he researched it through his wife, and then he made it come alive.
So go see it. I mean, who cares what the culture is? I mean, it's a good story. You're going to learn some things. You're going to see a world that's not in existence today. You can only do this in film. So, like The Last Emperor, is in, the Memoirs of a Geisha. I don't care what the culture is. In fact, it makes it more interesting sometimes to not understand the culture and to learn about it as you watch and experience the film.
And that goes back to what Heath said at the beginning, which is each of these characters is so interesting, right? You come in there, you're like, I was going to be like, do I care about any of these people? I'm here to see Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld. And then I'm like, no, I want to go back to that singer woman, that hot singer woman that, I want to go back to her. I want to, Perline. I want to go back to Perline. I want to go spend more time with Cornbread, right? Then we got Delroy Lindo playing this. Oh,
he was great.
Yeah. And and the thing is the respect that Coogler shows, every one of these small characters is interesting. You want to find they get a time to shine. Everyone gets a moment that's their moment that you're like, hey, can we go back to that now? And it's just a pure ensemble of all these working character actors who most people would not recognize, wouldn't know their names. And you're like, this has elevated all of them to this high level.
Sorry, there's an echo I can hear.
There is an echo. We are getting that echo, Jim.
Yeah, it's not me. I muted myself.
I muted myself as well. So it's not. I'm not.
It might be you, Mr. Bacon. Remember, you warned us that the echo.
No, I did, but I was muted that whole time.
Right, let me try. I'm going to mute out. See you next.
Hello.
I don't hear an echo, so I'm not sure.
I heard an echo on camera.
No, there is an echo. So it must be me. Let me sign back in. I'll be back.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just to piggyback what he was saying, the acting performances were strong across the board. Yeah, just to piggyback what he was saying, I can hear an echo again.
Yeah, me too. Like a really strong
echo. Across the board.
Heath, can you mute?
I can hear an echo again.
Yeah, me too. Like a really strong.
It's like
what is happening?
10-second delay.
Can you mute? There it goes. Yeah. Heath. Yeah, it was. I think it was Heath that time.
Heath, it's coming from your microphone because the echo stopped when you muted.
Is it maybe too close to? Do you have like?
It's coming from your microphone. Yeah, it's coming from Heath. The echo stopped when you muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Delay too.
No, it's okay.
You want to try signing back in?
Okay. Yeah, I can sign back in.
No, that's okay.
Let's try.
Boy, yeah. Sorry, it's just people are saying such good things, and it becomes distracting.
Yeah, I can sign back in.
Yeah.
No, let's try. Sorry, it's just people are saying such good things, and it becomes distracting. Yeah, I can sign back in.
Wow.
Sorry.
I think, honest to goodness, I think it might be StreamYard. It's a very I've had this echoing issue with others as well recently, like in the past week or so. So stand by, everyone, please.
Well,
we'll
tell
be
you
back.
what, Bacon, while we're here, let's talk a little bit about box office numbers. Let's talk about the financial side of this.
Yeah, go for it.
Cameron mentioned that article that came out that was kind of like, almost kind of downplaying Sinners as
well. I think that's because that Warner Brothers was real pissed that they made the deal that they did with Coogler to give him the rights free and clear in 25 years.
Well, it's worth it to take a look at the numbers because the argument I heard too is, oh man, they overspent for a horror film. They spent $90 million. And I'm like, when I hear $90 million, I'm like, man, that sounds like cheap by today's standards after dealing with Lucasfilm for the past decade. But So it was $90 million budget. Usually you double that to get an idea of marketing costs.
About 2.5%. So it needs about 225 million to break even, which it will reach.
Okay, so it's at 247 million worldwide.
Then it's already it's in the black.
In the green, yeah.
So it's already made a profit. And as of yesterday, May 7th, Sinners finished second in the box office, about $1 million short of the Thunderbolts. So it's right behind the Thunderbolts.
Wow.
Marvel. So
Thunderbolts was a very entertaining movie. I don't plan to see that again. I'm seeing this one a fourth time.
I haven't even seen Thunderbolts yet, and I asked my kids if they wanted to see it. My kids said no. They're like becoming a litmus test.
It's fun. It's a better. It's a callback to when MCU was good, but again, it doesn't hold me enough that I'm going to watch it again.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I haven't
heard it's fun. I'll give it a watch, but I'm not. I'll probably wait for it to come to Disney Plus. I don't think I'll go and see that one in the theater.
Yeah, the motivation level is just low in the household around here, and that's not anyone pushing anything. The kid, I get a good read on the how culture's affecting my kids. Sometimes, so they were not into the Thunderbolts like at all, which is surprising. But we'll probably watch it when it comes out on streaming.
Yeah.
And we've talked about Sinners here at the house too, so they know about that. My youngest is like, is it something I could watch? I was like, not yet. He's like 9 years old.
Yeah.
One day soon, So anyway, Heath, we just went over the box office numbers and how worldwide Sinners pulled in $247 million. So this film has turned a profit. All the critics regarding the production of this film are wrong. And let me tell you, turning a profit in today's Hollywood is no small thing. A lot of these films, what's weird is a lot of these films that are on the smaller side of the budget are the ones that I'm enjoying the most. Like Godzilla -1, that film was made for nothing. It was the best film of 2023. So some of these, I hope this is a preview of where things are going. Smaller budgets, stronger creativity, a little bit more perhaps of the auteur director. We get more of a directorial vision in these films. I would like to see some more of that because I feel like that was sadly missing in the last.
In the chat, I was talking with a Nerdy Ogre, I believe, gentleman in the chat. I think this gentleman might be a woman, but a Nerdy Ogre in the chat. And I was pointing out that several films that this year has been a year of very, very good independent or at least lower budget films. And the other examples I would use are Companion, which is an AI film very similar to Ex Machina, and I was blown away by that movie. I mean, that was and that was a very low budget.
I have not seen that one.
It really is worth watching. It's a surprisingly good movie. You're like, I think I know what this movie's about. And you're like, I don't know what this movie's about. And it goes in very interesting. It's like a thriller, but it has all these philosophical things like Ex Machina did. And then there was a brilliant horror movie that I'd never seen before, which is Hard Eyes. Which I don't know if anyone saw that. It's a slasher movie, and the genius of Hard Eyes was it's a slasher movie that's overlaid on a romantic comedy.
A rom-com, yeah.
It's a rom-com, and it brilliantly executes it's basically a serial killer that targets people during Valentine's Day. And so the entire movie starts off as all the rom-com tropes, and then a serial killer intervenes, which is kind of what Sinners is. This is a grand epic Lawrence of Arabia, Malcolm X type epic story of a culture, and then vampires enter into it, right? So I think we're going to see more of these mishmashes that are going to happen.
On.
And
I think it's crazy how far above their weight the horror film has been punching.
It's made a real big comeback
in the past 2 or 3 years. Yeah, it's absolutely insane what is being done with it's not pure horror, but movies with horror elements that you could land in that genre are just they're really overperforming. I never would have saw this coming a mile off.
Well, and A24 has really moved themselves up in the horse race as a legitimate contender. These guys are turning out a lot of great films, and they're not blowing their budgets. I think one day we're going to look back and just in shock at what like Lucasfilm was spending on their movies and how much money they like. We're going to be like, what were they?
But that's all money laundering. That's not actually business. I mean, I've talked about that's money laundering. That's not actually no one's actually trying to make money on that thing. I mean, that's Kathleen Kennedy giving money to various associates at cocktail parties. I mean, that's what that is.
So I did see Companion. I thought it was, I liked Companion. I didn't love it, but I did like Hard Eyes a lot. I liked The Substance was another one that I really was big on. And have you seen Strange Darling?
I've not seen Strange Darling yet. No.
Strange Darling is great. You have no idea what's going. You have to see Strange Darling. Another great film. Completely. You just have to see it. It's not. It'll catch you by surprise. And then Warfare, which was filmed for $20 million. 90 minutes of film time is 90 minutes of screen time. So you're watching it in real time. Another great movie. It was one of the best war movies I've ever seen. That came out this year. So there's all of these movies coming out that are showing me signs that the creative drive has not been snuffed out in Hollywood. You just had a group of people, the club, so to say, just blocking everybody out, but now everybody's starting to get through. So keep them going, keep going.
Well, I know. I thought that people are going to think that the world is ending because I went to see 2 movies in 2 weeks, Warfare and Sinners, and I loved them both. And I was texting everybody that you guys see these movies. It's like, like how often does that happen? Like that hasn't happened in a long, long time. There's 2 movies in 2 weeks I would go see and loved. I mean, that's not real. But now here it is.
Well, and Warfare can fit, at least partially into that terror/horror genre as well. For, what takes place in that film, it really, really is an anxiety-inducing as you're sitting there, watching the film and listening to the artillery and the munitions. It's just, it's a very intense film to watch.
Well, and I'm realizing how powerful sound is because even like in Sinners, the sound is a character in this film, and as far as yes, not just the music too, just all the sounds going on in the film.
Yeah,
and also like even though there's like the idea of forced conversion, I think we mentioned early on in this discussion, the preacher was not portrayed as a bad character or as a bad guy.
He's got a point of view that's completely fair because he's not wrong. He warns his son, "You're gonna dance with the devil. Devil's gonna come home." That happens.
Yes.
Well, but he's also played as a noble individual, even though you get a sense that they're challenging, maybe a Christian worldview. Yep. They didn't demonize the Christian character. So this film was so excellent at making points without demonizing anybody.
Yeah, it was it established all of the characters in this sort of, it wrapped them in an understanding. Like this, yes, I'm saying these things about Christianity, but I understand why you would choose it. Yes, I'm saying these things about the American melting pot, but I understand why you would choose it. It's yes, I am, I am portraying all of these different aspects of ancestral heritage, and I understand if you choose that. It's all of it wrapped in understanding, except for the one group at the end.
Yeah, right, but that's like pure bigotry. Because that's pure bigotry. But that again goes back to my first point. This is a movie that's against oppression. It's a movie against colonialism, right? And that's what that represents. Because the reality was Irish were considered black by the Klan. They were targets. People don't realize it. Yeah. The Irish were targeted. They also
worked in the fields. They worked in the fields alongside black slaves as indentured servants. There's a famous quote about it's attributed to. Let me see if I can find it. It's attributed to a black slave who said, "My master is a great tyrant. He treats me like a common Irishman."
Well, but that also explains the layers of racism that have existed in American society, where it's better to be a cracker than it is to be below that, which is to be a black person in that environment, right? So at least you're above that, right? And that's how oppression does. Oppression creates these hierarchical structures, so that you are happy with your place in the system, which is what Remick is saying. We can all be one. We can all be unified. And upgraded. Remick, bites a Chinese person. He speaks Chinese, right? Imagine how Remick. This guy's been around for 1,500 years. This guy's around for 1,500 years, right? Imagine how much knowledge he has from his world travels. I mean, this guy's like a Da Vinci figure. He's like, he knows everything, right? And so because he's absorbed it from everybody, and he wants to share it with you.
Wow.
He's the modern, he's the AI, right? You can all join this and be upgraded to, it's interesting. It's almost like it's almost offering a God consciousness in a way, right?
Oh,
you're going to have all this knowledge.
Yeah. Eating from the tree of knowledge, you get this, this big upgrade as a living being. You get this special power if you do this thing.
But I want to address the point you made rightly, which is that Christianity itself is not critiqued here. Even the movie's called Sinners, right? And there's a recognition that all these people are in this situation because they're at a sinful juke joint, dancing hot and sultry and sweating. And these people, the women, they're all married and they're all having
she's
affairs.
Married.
All of them, Perline is married. Mary, Hallie Stanfield's character is married. Right? Our heroes are gangsters. Our heroes are gangsters. Not only are they gangsters, they stole from other gangsters. That's where they got their money from, right? Who are the moral people in this movie? It's I think his wife, who's like I said, the hoodoo practitioner, right? She's you could consider her a sinner because she's practicing hoodoo and voodoo, right? And so these people, bad things happen to all of them. But the interesting point, there's this moment in there where you've got the character Smoke telling his cousin who's seduced by this world. His cousin's like, I'm in love with this. I want to be a musician. And he tells him, no, just go be, he said, there's a town right next door, good black people who are honorable, who are family people. You go play music in their churches. Don't enter our world. To the point that he puts a gun to his head, says, don't enter our world. Because he's trying to save him. He loves this kid. He doesn't want this kid corrupted, right?
That's like the Tyler Durden move of Raymond K. Hessel. Where,
But that's the whole thing. And it's, and the vampires represent that. There's that incredible moment near the end where preacher boy, Sammy, he thinks he's captured the vampire. He thinks he's about to be turned, and he starts praying the Lord's Prayer, and then Remick joins him because you think Remick is gonna, and he says, I've known this prayer since my father was forced to recite it when they stole my father's land and they forced him to become a Christian, right? But it still gives me comfort. And then guess what? All the vampires start saying the Lord's Prayer. I've never seen anything like that.
That's a great line. Yeah. It's a great line because it makes the viewer off balance. You think you got to read on this guy, and then you're like, oh, but he's saying the Lord's Prayer. What the heck?
Right. So that's what you're supposed to do to defend yourself.
Right. Yeah. So it keeps the audience off balance. And I think to me that is absolutely indicative of good writing. A good writer can keep you off balance and still keep your characters pure. A bad writer subverts expectations by doing random acts that throw you off, and it's not good.
Yeah. That's different. Subversion versus surprise. I've always used that. Somebody like a Ryan Johnson subverts because he wants to disappoint you. He wants you to feel bad. Surprise makes you feel wonder. That's what this movie is. This movie is full of, your mouth keeps falling open. Your movie is filled with wonder. It's like, I didn't expect him to do that. Wow, wondrous was that.
Yeah. Yeah. But the characters have a through line, each of them. So they're not just behaving in an akimbo way to surprise you. There's a through line. You get to understand these characters and all their complexities in the decisions they make. So, but I actually thought that the actors and actresses were incredible. I thought the cinematography was incredible. The set designs, the costume design, hairstyle. I think this is going to get nominated for casting, if not win. So, Kamran, this makes me want to ask a question.
Yep.
What is your answer, to the best of your knowledge, of there's a lot of like Godzilla, Barbie, there's these films coming out. How come they're not winning awards? You would think that some of these films, they're like, we need more diversity. Well, Godzilla -1 is Japanese in Japanese. Barbie was considered a feminist film, which it really wasn't. But
it was a critique of feminism, which you answered. Right. So you've answered your question. It goes back to the Kathleen Kennedy, champagne crowd, of limousine liberals, right? Who all say these things that they don't believe. They don't believe in these things. They didn't want to give Godzilla -1 was a Best Picture nominee. It should have been that, right? But it didn't get that. It got relegated to like the Best Foreign Picture, and it won for special effects, right? It should have been a candidate for Best Picture, right?
Yeah.
That's Barbie, because my opinion of Barbie was that it was a masterful critique and parody of woke culture, and because people who talk a lot about woke culture are so not as smart as they think they are, they couldn't see it, right? And they ended up mocking themselves by not getting it. But Hollywood understood it. Hollywood understood that it's an anti-feminist movie, and it's a men's rights movie in many ways with Ken, right? And Hollywood understood that. They were resentful of that, right? And because why wouldn't they give it to a beautiful blonde white girl, attractive people? They should have given it to them. They didn't, because Hollywood understood the message was anti-champagne establishment. They didn't like it, right? And so this will be the struggle. Will they give this movie the awards it deserves? I will be surprised if I watch a movie this year that will make me think this is a better movie. For right now, for me, this is the best picture I've seen this year. I would be stunned. I don't see anything coming that I know of that's going to knock it out of that for my personal thing. So will they give it to it? Because now they resent the fact that this black man outsmarted them. He made more money. They all were saying he's not gonna make a profit. He's already made a profit 1 month into this, right? The New York Times said that, right? The New York Times said that. He's embarrassed them. And now he owns the rights to this. 25 years from now, he can make a musical that's gonna be bigger than Wicked, and he's gonna own it.
He's out for him. Yeah, from tip to tail.
So good for him. I hope he makes $1 billion.
Yeah, I hope he makes all the money in the world, and I hope that they give him more money to continue to do what he's doing. I don't think anyone's going to give him a deal. I don't think we're ever going to see a deal like this again in our lifetimes with regard to him being able to own the rights in 25 years.
Oh, no, it's like Lucas. Once you cash that in, one guy cashes that.
That's it. One guy makes that deal, and that's it. No one else. I can answer your question snarkily, Doug, if you want a snarky answer.
Yes.
Now that the Academy is actually making people watch the nominees, I would hope that we're going to see the correct films win awards.
But it's embarrassing they had to issue that.
That's not about correct, because the voters are human beings and they have their prejudices. Yeah. And often, like, Denzel Washington, who was given an Oscar for playing a corrupt black cop, he was denied an Oscar for Malcolm X, which remains his greatest performance of his entire career, right? Because Malcolm X is too threatening to them, right? Malcolm X was a black conservative, right? That they can't have that. So they couldn't give it to him for that. But as a black man who's a corrupt cop who kills innocent people, okay, we'll give him the Oscar for that. It wasn't his greatest performance.
When I say correct, I don't mean objectively correct. I mean correct because that's the one that I want to win the award, and that's really all that matters to me.
Yeah, well, that's objective. You're right. But look, I mean, this what I want to go back now. Maybe we can talk a lot. We've talked throughout about the music, but the idea what this is gonna do is it's going to bring back the power of music, and not just because this isn't a musical like The Sound of Music, where you suddenly magically the girls are alive and she's spinning and whatever. There's music coming out of nowhere, like a Hindi film, a Bombay film, where suddenly you get the actor and the actors are swept away they're in the Swiss Alps and they're dancing. That's a Bombay film, right? And so that's a Bollywood film. And but the music is integral. It's not magical. It creates magic, but the music is just people.
It's also all diegetic. It's all within the world of the story.
Yeah, and that's going to make people realize what the power of music is. That music is a spiritual force. The fact that people this soundtrack, like I'm just replaying these songs on repeat on my car. Right, the soundtrack I can't get out of my head, and that's I haven't had that in a movie in a very long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of spirituals on there. There's some of the Irish music on there, and then Ludwig Göransson. Ryan Coogler has his own crew. Like Christopher Nolan has his guys, and who's the other guy that? Anyway, a lot of these. Martin Scorsese has DiCaprio. They all have their guys. Ryan Coogler has his little crew, and Göransson, he likes his music because he did Black Panther as well. Isn't that right? He did Black Panther?
Yes.
Yeah, and the cinematographer, this woman, it's a woman, right? I think she's done several of his movies, and I mean, look, she deserves best cinematography. The reason is because when I watched the movie, I didn't know what I was getting into, right? So I sat there, and when the opening shots of the South and the sun over the cotton field, I was like, wow, this is like Lawrence of Arabia level cinematography. That's the first 30 seconds of the movie, and I was like, what's happening here? I didn't expect this.
Yeah, the footage, like I said, it was escapism. I love that when I'm watching a movie and I see images that make me go like, wow, like I'm not in a theater anymore. I'm in this place, and this is what the sun looks like out here. I haven't seen the sun look like that in Austin. You're transported. This film completely does that, and it's all really done powerfully through cinematography, and then augmented with the music and the sound editing. So, I hope this sweeps. I hope this sweeps up in the Oscars. When I was a kid, my dad knew a guy who was a movie reviewer, and to me, that was like the coolest thing in the world. He wrote for a newspaper up in Chicago. He was a movie reviewer. He was my dad's roommate in college, and I remember they would talk about movies, and this probably left a huge imprint on me. It's probably why I'm the way I am today. But they would talk about movies very seriously, and even when I was a child, this guy would ask my opinion, and he would sit there and listen. He'd be like, "What do you think?" And I would be like, "Oh, I think that," and he'd be like, and he would listen and he would respond and everything. Anyway, we would have this contest every year for the Oscars. You'd pick your first and your second choice, and we would tally up the winners. You're guessing on foreign films, but we would watch I took this so seriously, and now we don't do that anymore. No one cares anymore. I want that to come back. I want movies to be so good again that for the Academy to recognize good movies, so that we can get back to great storytelling and inspire, like Cameron said a long time ago, new generations of people who care so much about these things that they'll be on whatever YouTube is in the future talking about these films. 30 years.
Well, this is going to be this movie, and this makes me happy to say this. This movie is a bit of a death knell to the sort of dumber YouTube commentators, right? It really is a death knell for, you talk about, we've had movie reviews dumbed down by a lot of the people that are out there whose entire purpose is to just anger you and make you hit clicks and whatever, and it's just left a scarred and pathologically, diminished fandom that can't appreciate good stuff, right? It's this movie, even these people, if they try to say, oh, it's racist, it's that, they just sound stupid. They just sound stupid now. And,
they don't get it. They really don't get it. If that's what their commentary is, they miss the point.
Well, it was easy to critique woke films, right? Because they were poor quality.
They're bad movies.
Right. My whole issue is the guiding principle behind that is that we're criticizing this strongly because we really care about good stories. Now that you have a good story, if you're still criticizing it, you're violating the basic principle that brought you out of the woodwork to come onto YouTube to fight against this stuff in the first place. You have to be able to recognize quality when it's there. And if you can't do it, then you're part of the problem. I mean, that's just the way it is. So you have to be able to recognize an excellent film, whether it conforms to your understanding of it or not. You have to be able to judge it on its merits. The word merit has been coming up a lot lately. So if the merit is there, you have to be able to say, this film has excellent merit. It doesn't matter, the demographic layout of it. I mean, it's almost like the opposite of woke, right? It's the same argument, just the opposite side,
Well, but the genius in this movie achieved what the wokesters claimed they wanted without doing that, right? This movie brings together people. This movie brings together all audiences. I'm a Pakistani guy playing the Irish songs again and again in my car, right? This is, and people, I'm watching the comments, the people are like, man, that black blues music, well, I didn't know it was that good, right? I mean, it's uniting people.
Yeah,
like, cultures I didn't know anything about, and you care about these people so much. So you're like, I don't, that the Klan really is the villain because these are good people. It doesn't black, white, they're just good people, and the Klan is a force of oppression against good people in this world because he takes the time to spell out how the goodness, the fact that they're all sinners, they're flawed human beings, and they're fundamentally good people. And then you have people that don't care whether they're good or bad; they just hate them because they're not in their out group. That's the genius of this movie. Achieves what all the wokesters pretended they wanted.
That is so correct. Like you said, one of the themes in this was the idea of anti-colonialism, anti-oppression. That's what wokesters want to talk about all day long, but they can't deliver it because
this movie is decolonization. This is a decolonization movie,
right? But so that it's like their argument has always been like, you can't handle stories with this stuff. Yes, I can. You just have to deliver a good story, and you have to be able to show competency at these other levels of storytelling. You can't just take this theme and whip it at me and then say, take it.
Not only can I handle it, I want to handle it. I want to.
I want to care. I want to care about.
I want to. I don't. Look, I'm not going to denigrate films because I want to denigrate films. I'm not going to denigrate films because I need the clicks I don't care about the clicks. I have a very small channel. I just want to get my ideas out there. I want movies to be good. The reason that I will call a film to the carpet for being bad, or the reason that I'll call writing to the carpet or cinematography or whatever it is for being bad is because I want it to be better. I don't want to harp on the fact that it's awful or that they should have done something different or that it wasn't manufactured well. I want them to be good. I like that's really the heart of the drive. You want the films to be good. I don't want to complain about. I would love to love every movie out there. It's never going to happen. But I just don't.
The reason you don't love every movie is because excellence is rare. It's a rare commodity. So when it's there, to me, the most important thing is to honor and celebrate that, because now we know this is what excellence looks like. How else can any of us get better at this stuff unless we can see and recognize what excellence is, and then hope to God we can emulate it. And if we fall short, at least we tried, right? That's the idea. We're trying to be excellent in our craft. We're trying to be excellent at a job. We're trying to be excellent. So you have to be able to recognize excellence. And if you can, then you should be judging poorly films that are claiming to be excellent or falling short. And if they're attacking you at the same time that they're falling short, well, that was an era. I'm glad that era is ending, but you should be able to recognize a great film.
The people think the era is ending. The era of the bad politicized movies is ending, and also the era of dumb people who use those bad politicized movies to insert themselves into cultural conversation and hijack it is also ending. And so we're now getting back to actually because I'm seeing the commentary on just, if you just go to the YouTube of any of these songs from the movie, right, and just go to the YouTube comments, people are just saying, man, this movie blew me away. Man, I can't believe I, as a white dude from Italian background, couldn't stop watching this movie. That's what filmmaking is supposed to be. And this narrative, I'm so tired of the Hollywood is dead and go woke, go broke. And just these mantras are so boring. They're so boring, right? Because they're outdated. And they're also people of low intellect just repeating stuff without actually seeing whether that actually applies to anything, right? When I hear Hollywood is woke, which when I was on Paulie's channel just before this, somebody was like, Hollywood's just woke. I was like, you tell that to all my friends who got fired from their DEI jobs in the last 6 months, as every single studio closed their DEI offices. Something's happening, right? That's suggesting a change. You just don't know what's happening and you don't care. And so you're just talking, and that era is ending too.
Well, but also, the proof is in the pudding. The movies that are coming out, there's good quality movies coming out. So, Sinners wasn't baked up and served this year. It started last year. So the process has already been in place for these changes to be made.
With that note, I actually need to start heading out. I've got a few things I have to do. I don't know if there are any last thoughts, Mr. Bacon, that you want to address on this movie, or Heath, we've over-talked you a lot. Is some stuff you want to raise?
Oh, no. I thought that what your commentary on the American films, because I'm big on that, and I think that this would be amazing if this would revitalize that, because we've heard so much over many years about, okay, well, what is this movie going to do? But okay, it did this in the United States, but it's got to go overseas as well. So, okay, maybe we can recoup money overseas. I mean, it would be amazing if there was a revitalization of movies that were for American audiences, budgeted for American audiences. You don't have to go to the Chinese audience and stuff like that. And so when you were talking about that, Cameron, I was thinking about that a lot. And I hope that's true, because I hadn't thought about this movie in that way. And of course I should have, but that, okay, now here, maybe this is an American movie and it will revitalize more of them. That would be amazing. Lower budget American movies would be incredible.
Well, and you look at this movie the reason, the prejudice, part of the prejudice, aside from the ideological reasons why they wanted to shoot down Ryan Coogler because he got too big for his britches, right? That the New York Times went and said this movie's not going to be profitable, is they also expected, because they assumed that they were correct, that the international audience wouldn't initially watch it, right? And then because the international audience would assume that it's just about black people in the South, had nothing to do with us. And they were correct. That has been the international audience's assumptions, right? And so they thought, well, they're not going to be able to make their money back because you need international. Well, they made their money back purely from domestic, right? And I believe with time, word of mouth will spread. It's already spreading in Europe. Like, people in Ireland are like, this movie honors our culture. Like, this is an Irish nationalist movie. They want to watch it, right? And so word is spreading. And eventually, and it's not like they weren't pandering to get to Chinese viewers to have Chinese characters in there, because Google discovered there were Chinese characters in town, because that's real. And so eventually Chinese will go, why? This happens to have authentic Chinese characters without pandering to us, without trying to sell us something.
It's part of their history, the diaspora.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've worked in China. China is a racist society. They don't like black people. I've worked there. I know it. It's true, right? They will prefer. That's why Disney will take black actors and minimize them on one sheet posters when they're in China. That's true. It is sad, and I hope that the people overseas begin to understand this ain't about black or white or anything else. This is an incredible human story that fills your heart. And anyone in any culture, people in Egypt are going to understand this. People in Indonesia are going to get this movie, man. And that's, I hope with time it's going to spread internationally, but it didn't need it, which is what Heath is saying. This movie was made, Coogler made this movie for an American audience, and he made money in an American audience. We haven't seen that in years.
And I would love to see more of that. I would love to see more of that.
Yeah,
I agree. I would love to see that too. I think one thing that we didn't get to talk about really was the colors that were used throughout the film, especially the juxtaposition of blue against red or red against blue. There's a whole weird transition that takes place between Smoke and Stack, where once Stack dies, Smoke, covered in blood, sort of steps into that role for a brief moment before taking it off again in order to, and Annie is dressed in blue, and she represents the old world tradition. And there's a whole element to the film that's told with color.
Well,
and I don't know how the women that are the adulteresses, they're both dressed in white.
Say again?
Look at Mary and Perline, who are adulteresses, right? They're both dressed in white. Yeah, they're dressed in white. So the idea is that they're still pure of heart, despite that, and we can see their characters are pure of heart.
Yes,
and the death scene of Smoke was one of the most incredible transitions to death that I have ever seen.
Oh yeah,
I mean that scene was fantastic. I don't want the smoke on her, and he's dealing with the real world and and the afterlife, at the same time, that was an incredible scene.
Yeah, and at that point, you don't need to see him die. You know it happened.
Right? Yes, it's
because that scene allowed it to happen. You don't need to see him clunk over.
You don't need to see his physical death or whatever. You're watching his spirit basically right then, and you understand what happens. I loved that scene.
I mean, for me, the final moment of just when Stack and Mary arrive in 60 years later in 1992, right? And they are dressed like he's dressed like Puff Daddy in those days, right? And she's dressed like that. She's dressed like all the girls I had crushes on in college, right? With the big hoop earrings and the denim jackets and chewing her gum, right? I mean, it's just amazing to see these people that we saw in another culture reborn in this one.
Yeah, and that was Buddy Guy, right?
Yeah, they brought an incredible performer to play that role, and he was very good in that. So it's and if you notice that couldn't tell if it was the band or just the club, but behind him he had a sign called Perline's. So I don't know if
Yes.
it's his Indians in it,
Oh yeah.
or it's the club, or he owns the club, right? But where he's playing, but it's Perlene's, and so he's honoring her 60 years later. He never forgot his first love. So that's the specificity of this film, that everything is on purpose. Every cut is on purpose. Even some people said, I want to know more about the Indians. I do too, but guess what? That's part of the franchise. Let's go into the Choctaw Indians and how they deal with vampires, right?
Yeah, I thought they were coming back. There was a moment when I thought that the chanting that I heard, of the singing, there was a moment I was like, oh, the Indians are outside, but they weren't.
Yeah,
it was the Irish singing or something.
No, well, Candace actually mentioned earlier
the Indians are back. But go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Heath.
No, I just thought they were coming back, but they never did. So that does leave them to a further franchise, and the Indian vampire hunters.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I also thought that they were coming back. Candace mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Christianity, the invasion of Christianity. On that point, it's the traditional religions, which is Annie's, that help them. It identifies the monster. It identifies the threat in the final fight, but it's also implied it helped the twins when they were at war. She follows up with also the Native Americans recognized Remick as a threat. So it is the traditional ancestral beliefs that help identify and attempt to capture or exterminate the vampiric threat.
And here's an interesting thing. I didn't know this. This is something I learned because now I want to research after this movie. So there's a reason that the Choctaw are it's all set up in the opening crawl.
Oh, yeah.
The West Africa, Irish, and the Choctaw, the three that are going to be in the movie, are set up, right? And the Choctaw, what's interesting about them, which I did not know now that I've researched a little bit, is that during the Irish famine, of the 1800s, the Choctaw tribes raised money for them. The Choctaw tribe were some of the biggest donors to save Irish people during the famine, right? Because the Choctaw had experienced colonization by Americans and marginalization and famine and intentional genocidal efforts. Many historians would argue that the Irish famine was engineered, right? The British English allowed it to happen, right? Because they wanted to get rid of these people. And so the Choctaw, seeing the English trying to starve out fellow human beings, had been through that, and they sent them money. So it's interesting, and maybe that's the reason why is Remick fleeing from them and not killing them? He could kill them. He's pretty strong. He's not afraid of anybody, and he's fleeing from them. He lets them live. It's probably out of respect because a Choctaw saved his people. So he's going to escape them, but he's not going to kill them.
Wow. Yeah,
that's very interesting because it also kind of harkens back to the deal that Smoke makes with Stack at the end, right? Don't kill.
Don't kill him. And again, the vampires are honorable. He doesn't have to honor that. Why should he honor that? Right? Why would he honor that? Because he's a vampire. He's not, at the end, he is a vampire. And he doesn't have to honor anything. And he offers Sammy eternal life, and Sammy says no. He could just force him. He could force him, right? He doesn't, because when they make an agreement, they have honor, right? And again, goes back to what we said, the whole idea of exchange, right?
And that scene, that mid-credit scene or end-credit scene, it informs, it backfills the entire rest of the film, because all we had seen up to this point are individuals getting bitten, getting mauled, and then becoming these murderous, bloodthirsty, trickster-type characters. But it kind of indicates that they've changed now, right? Like, Remick is in their heads, they're changed now. But then when we get to this scene, and Stack is still Stack, and Mary is still Mary, it informs the whole rest of the film in retrospect, which is that's a masterful stroke. I mean,
they're still dangerous killers. I mean, there's that moment where the bartender thinks Mary is beautiful, and she smiles, and her teeth are out, and she's doing that on purpose because she's I can eat you, and she is a vampire, and she's happily a vampire at that point. So. And so that's it. All right, gentlemen, I have to start winding down. I got some stuff to do. This was an incredible conversation.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
I'm so happy to have all of you here. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Heath. Thank you, Doug. I'm going to go ahead and take us down now. Is there anything else that anyone wants to say, or you want to, get websites out there? Everything is in the description.
Plug our stuff for anyone watching this. Yeah.
All right, Cameron, you've got a Patreon. There's a link in the description. Doug, you have a Patreon and a book, and I recognize that I didn't actually put the book link in there. It'll be in there as soon as I take us down. Heath, you have many YouTube channels and also a Kickstarter that's sort of waiting in the wings. If anyone has any interest, please do go down into the description, click those links, check these individuals out on their channels, on their Patreons. Cameron, this has been absolutely fantastic. I'm over the moon to have you here. Doug, as always, very, very happy, very intellectual conversation. And Heath, you're the whole reason that I got started in the first place. And your commentary on film and story is always very, very intuitive and
prescient,
top notch. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for the chat. And I will see you later. So I'm going to hit end stream. And as is tradition, you're going to take a look at my stupid face for